not bad. Not bad. Brisk cup of coffee. It's probably just some fucking science lab mold that Walmart comes out with. These coffee pods. I just stick these in the freezer and they seem to taste better. I haven't gained or lost anything. In fact, on the scale for the past 2 months, my weight is exactly the same. Despite going through very big changes, just visually. At least wanted to think about like what bulimia is. So that's pretty much like a classic definition of a bulimic. They're not necessarily heavy or anorexic, but they go through these turbulent fluctuations, and that pretty much describes everyone, doesn't it? Because it can be brought on by financial hardship. I was just looking at this sad story of this gal who she had a tumultuous life, but she's that woman who was caught. And what a terrible thing to be that woman who was caught, you know, getting an orgasm using a vibrator outside, like in a private area, but being captured by some bitch who ends up exploiting the shit out of her. And if she was like a comedian or whatever, and really wore that on her sleeve, she could be like, yeah, I'm the chick who got caught with a vibrator. Oh well. Like, oh well, that could have been her whole punchline, right? Like, oh well. Orgasm well. But she was battling with other people's, that's what cancel culture is, you know, you're battling with other people's ideologies and dogmas. Instead of clearing inventory and going, maybe I don't need to be around my fundamentalist Christian parents who made me want to do these things in the first place, passing judgment, right? And actually amplified that quite intentionally so that you would take on and martyr their sin, right? She could have been that oh well chick and launched her own internet campaign. So I finally caught up on sleep. Didn't sleep really at all, and then I got about 3 to 5 hours sleep. And then last night I was having a hard time because there was a tsunami from the big tsunami warning last night up until midnight. And the last time I remember this, but I know there was one other, it was in 2011. I had a motorcycle at that time, and I erased that footage, but I filmed the tsunami area and hooked it up to the back of my bike at that time. I actually duct taped a flip video on the back, and it worked out pretty well. I was surprised. I erased that. Probably would have got 1 million views by now. But that really shows us, you know, it's the privacy and the you know, the Constitution. Like, are you supporting the Constitution by filming someone where you're being the pervert, the weirdo, the voyeur, and you just happen to catch her? Like, she was so guilt-ridden yet obvious. Right? She just needed
go back to that release, I guess, but is it deviant behavior? And then you begin to look at it, you're looking at it like they uncovered her whole life after that. Kind of a vibrator incident. Are you fucking kidding me? And all she had to do is say, I never did that.
Say, no, that's a nervous condition.
But she was honest and forthright, and it didn't catch her any breaks. You never want to be honest. So it's a dishonest exchange with law enforcement from the beginning.
You're guilty of whatever is being placed upon you before
Proving yourself innocent. That ruins lives. It's ruined my life, but I never even had a legal brush ever.
it's all ex-wife lies. Do you think I feel bad that she's having a hard time talking and she's slurring these days?
It's like, that's universal justice. You're a liar.
You know? So, but then it affects my kids.
So as a father who loves my kids, I say, hold my son's hand and pray.
Tell my younger son, it's going to be okay, man.
That I understand the universal mother, even though I don't say this, but your mother's not that.
I understand the universal mother, but my mother's not that.
And these archetypes, you can't confuse the archetype.
And that's what really, right in our faces, what these Marvel characters are all about.
It's taking an idea of Superman and saying, look how preposterous this is.
Because suddenly, then you get other people coming in.
The whole Lex Luthor connection, and you get other people coming in that exploit you and actually make your powers
really look negligible.
And suddenly, who are you? What are you? What is your value? And the message in that last Superman movie was,
everything was great.
he idolized his deceased parents and his home, and didn't get the message, the last bit of the message,
Right? That was embedded there in crystal.
and replayed, and that our technology intruding and going wherever I wanted to go. Right? That
The character in that last Superman movie played that. It was like the evil or the dark side of,
if people like Lex Luthor, the CEO, could and would
violate other people's rights, which you already know that that's happening. It's been
Mark Zuckerberg and all the charges against him. And look at the US government just wanting all that data and wanting to make sure
that you either give us every bit of data and then work for us and collect more data,
or we're going to throw the book at you. And Mark Zuckerberg's not a private citizen.
there's a vesting process. What do you think the Society of the Cincinnati is?
And you can play games, you can get people kicked out, and then their kids can circulate back around because they were members, their forefathers were members. I can actually, I'm a candidate for the Society of Cincinnati.
Not that I would do it.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on drinking coffee, and there's about a half a cup there. Pretty gross coffee. Really does taste like mold.
Walmart coffee tastes like fucking mold.
So I'm down to like a really base level of supplements,
Where I'm just doing like the very base of everything, but
the thing is that I did all these larger doses, like the vitamin C. I was going up around 10,000 milligrams for a while. Now I'm just down to 1,000 or 2,000.
but I haven't, there's been no lapse.
That's been important to me. To boost it up, super dose, and then balance it back out. I did that a little bit with vitamin D, but I did take a lot of breaks, so I don't think my levels are anywhere near what they're supposed to be. In fact, now that I'm on a fat-free diet, I know that vitamin E and vitamin D are low. By the way, gotta eat some beef liver before it just goes bad. I've been taking a very minor amount of beef liver in each day, very minor, and I'm not eating, so I should start, I should do probably some, I got a little bit of beef liver, not much. But I'm able to get in all my vitamins and nutrients. Yeah. Man. People are shit, right? People are shit, but it's more than that. There is a grid. There is a grid. There's a lot of compromise. So today, we're just starting out with a lot of walking here. But even that, I've bumped it back to moderation. And I've bumped back the trimethylglycine to a moderate base level now. Just everything's hitting a really base level. And I think people have a hard time with that. It's returning to a base. I think society actually keeps people from doing that. You have to wonder if that moderate base middle place even exists in some people. I think that's a far harsher, more pervading question than any other. The fanciful exploitation of YouTube, social media, attention grabbing, it's always been going on. The media has always been used. It's like from Arnold Schwarzenegger to I just had it on the tip of my tongue and I was going to say it, Andy Warhol. Like all these people they were just using the media through sensationalism, lying out their ass, terrible, despicable people. Nothing unique, nothing special about them, taking whatever shortcuts they could and feeding a story to people for entertainment. There's always been media before media even existed. It's the people. Again, it's a consensus. are trying to get away from their boring lives. Gossip, gossip, gossip. That's what social media is. It's gossip. It's exploitation and gossip. You only know this when you get back to a base and you go, oh wow. Just by me reaching out to this world, it's tried to kill me from the inside out and fuck up my very existence. You wonder. You could very well wonder. And I know movies have done this where it's like there's a hostile consciousness that's only hostile to you. Yesterday I watched something on Max. It was like Death of the Unicorn with Paul Rudd. Or How to Kill a Unicorn or something. It's very interesting, right? Just the whole terminology with unicorn and wokeism. But then that girl who like never actually ages or grows or anything and is playing like this eternal sort of teenage Hispanic teenage figure. It's interesting because you had like from the very beginning of the movie, you kind of knew what was going to happen, right? You have these despicable characters that are supposed to just be see-through and transparent and one-dimensional, unipolar, where all they want is money, all they want is to exploit whatever. And the old man, you know, he's given an extension of life, and it is a slightly more enduring, better person, only because he's faced with certain death soon, right? And then as he begins to use the unicorn blood and grinds down the unicorn horn to not only heal back, but gain like vitality. He ends up just being the piece of shit that he really is. And then the unicorn, turns out that the unicorn that they killed was just a little baby unicorn. And the parents are coming. And it was also a tie-in with the teenage girl, where there was some sort of cosmic or universal communication, a return back to the mother, to the balance, right? Where the whole family of the unicorns came back to life and they couldn't die. So there was this hint in this subliminal way that maybe the father, the daughter, and the deceased mother would return back to one another. There was like this promise of that, of this eternal life, because the girl was pure of heart. And it sort of tied into like, I mean, how could it not, but it tied into like Arthurian sort of legends, you know. But it's instead taking the female, sort of, well, not sort of, but explicitly implying on a much more theological and ontological level that Mary, the Gospel of Mary, Mary's role in the Catholic Church, that the female, the divine feminine, is the only thing that could be pure, when it's really Christianity is posing just the opposite. It's saying from your sacrament, right? You are the lesser role. So there's this phi or phi power resolution between male and female humans in our creation or recreation or engineering, to say, because females contain less, this is just the truth, and are less. We're talking about physiologically strength, the brain size, everything. That when you take the human genome and you expose it in utero to certain agents, elements, hormones, you're going to come out with it. But then there's that big argument that we all start out female, right? Or that even more so, we all start out from a reptilian sense. So it's really about a window or an exposure to an existential world,
where it's like, well, and then we see what females become when they think that they have achieved some sort of utter power. They're just as corrupt, if not more so, because they're tied into a covenant coterie that nobody likes to talk about. Okay? So the main question is, if one could achieve purity and maintain purity, what would that look like? Though we know that like a moth to the flame or the light, that person being in their own self-expression, like what we began to talk about. I can't remember her name, but it was like this woman who masturbated out in public, but she wasn't doing it on public display. Somebody was voyeurizing her, and this was back in 2021, and she took her life. Obviously, she was battling with her own personal demons of what's wrong, right, good and bad. Because if she just wanted to go with that and become corrupt, and most people in the social media sense would be like, well, she should have just joked about it. And like I said, come out with some program called Oh Well, like orgasm with a big huge oh well. Put it on, be known. Sell a whole line of vibrators, right? That's what most social media people would do. That's what this generation would do. They'd be like, I'm owning it, I'm gonna become a billionaire. There's nothing in there. You don't have any substance inside. Or do we have substance inside? It's this constant grappling, right? So you get into the cross, and what the cross really represents is this junction point where you have all these attributes. And lo and behold, the woman was wearing a gold cross around her neck. So there's more to this than just the false piety and the reaction to persecution, because this woman was just being a woman. She had a son. She was being there for her son. She kept her son alive. She just signed off, not that it's a good thing or a bad thing, for a motorcycle registration. Maybe I'll put a link below. I just don't really want to exploit people based on that, but it's an interesting observation of discovery. Right? But it's not really a discovery unless we aren't grounded in that, back to our quintessential base. Even base is taken away. Based, right? Like, you don't care. Why should I care? So I'm sure we could all reflect on that if we're living any sort of truth. And we are put through some sort of strange matrix that's testing the human condition when exposed to utter loss of power. You watch it over and over again. There's the perception of power, then there's the loss of power. This happens over and over and over again. Feeling a little dyspeptic. So this is my 5th day on no fat, very low fat, where I'm not eating any fat at all. 5th day. Coming off 35 days of carnivore, virtually no changes, no difference. But what was interesting is that my skin's all kind of like drawn up and nothing's like protruding or hanging out, and everything seems to be getting leveled out. Like, I've done this many times. Like this has been the constant or the go-to with any sort of bodybuilding diet, where I'm not talking with PEDs. I'm saying as a natural lifter for many years, having achieved many different things, mostly all just personal best, but really noteworthy personal best, even while I was working 40, 60 hours a week as a teenager. Yeah, that was a thing. Finishing high school, and then starting a little gym in my garage while I was working full time, for the most part. And then even
when I was years in, 3-4 years into a career where I was working in the hotel industry, I remember driving Sylvester Stallone around for an entire week or two, and several other celebrities at that time. But I think they gave that to me because Sylvester Stallone's an asshole, though. I think they hooked me up with that because he's a dick. It wasn't fun. It wasn't engaging. He was an asshole. All he did is bitch and control, and you wonder what the fuck's going on. And Arnold Schwarzenegger would stay out there and stuff, and I don't even think I knew when he was like inside or whatever, but I didn't break out of my silence. When I opened up this club, there was the potential of getting Arnold Schwarzenegger to actually cut the ribbon. But you don't start with name dropping, you start out with real science. And if whoever you're partnered with doesn't understand that, then it's not a partnership at all. And if you have to educate them on what the science is, and you don't have to be like some Linus Pauling, Nobel Prize winning scientists to understand this stuff, right? That's the beauty of Linus Pauling, is that he offers everybody. He says, look, orthomolecular nutrition. This is what happens when you just boost with vitamin C when you can, right? So, I personally wouldn't expect any big difference with any dietary shift or change. It's that there's an adjustment period, right? And it's not even been a week, but it's going on a week. And you're gonna see, that 2 or 3 weeks has to go by, even with, lots of walking and training. But I feel more balanced. And I never like that, because there's something very aware of you that hates you and it has jealousy if you just return back to your human base. Tell me I'm wrong about that. And that's all that chick was trying to do when it was playing with the vibrator, killed herself soon after because somebody was voyeurizing her. And she should be charged. She should be charged. But there's really, I'm sure people have looked at it and gone in, lawyers, and gone, there's absolutely nothing we could charge her with. Because she's out in public, and anything that happens out in public, but could we get her on a keeping calm charge? Yeah, man, a lot of people calling me next month. A lot more collectors. Yeah, I put everything into what I'm doing. If you don't steal and sell the farm under your kids, you don't get anything. And that's what our forefathers did, most of us. Is that our forefathers actually sold all our land and our gold and lived hog wild while they were alive and sold off their entire lineage. That's really what marks when people are saying, what's animalistic, what's not. But the strange thing is when we discover that many animals make provisions for their offspring, for the long term. But you have to ask yourself, is this just genetically embedded in the oxytocin type reactions that certain animals exhibit when they don't have this oxytocin attachment, they become very amorous. They're very amorous people. And for the non-amorous, for the oxytocin based, that is religion, right? That is the conscientious mind. That is the person who is tied to something that's this etheric, almost judgmental body, right? Of social conditioning, but it's something that pre-exists religion. That religion is something that is embedded in our very physiology and in the fabric of the universe. Without it, there would be no reverence for a tempo or a rhythm in the cosmic sense and localized. You know, the true religion has always been the sun worship that's giving us life, but then to have an understanding that that something else, a calendric, zodiacal mechanism, is indeed allowing us existence. But when we see that, we internalize our own existence as something that's quite separate and personal. And what the universe seems to be saying to people over and over again is that it's not personal, and you are a part of this. Just do your fucking job. And the strange thing is that when people like David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, Ed Edwards, all these people that really lived long lives and then acted like they're Christian good people for the most part. It's crazy. Like, these people were highly intelligent, saw themselves in a pattern recognition, just like a politician does. And the thing that J.J. Vance does on Operation TCD is he goes in and he looks at the family bloodlines and goes, holy shit, these people like Charles Manson or Ed Edwards, or you go on and on, right, are affiliated and very well could have been born on the other side of this thing, where they were politicians and they were a political, power, axis of power. They act like they're getting away with something, don't they? They act like they're getting away with something. And you watch the same story with these politicians over and over again. Like you watch them age out in front of you. Like, they make it a point to say, oh, look, this person has a little gray hair here on this term. And then a couple years later, a little more, look at this, and they're even growing it out. And they're starting to trip over themselves. They're putting on quite an act, right? And so what I like to remind people is, like, do you realize that the whole process of them being who they are and recognizing the unison, the combination, the chimera, the animal nature and the higher nature of man as beast and God, God beast, the overman, the ubermensch, right? As a species is supposed to be refuted, ostracized, killed, hanged. They're trying to push us toward the inevitable, where, and it will be a planned, and it's coming up. And it's when they say it, gonna happen, and they'll plan out the day and the time. And it's when, like, this thing about Avi Loeb, you know, Harvard, wanting to get $1 billion to prove that this 7-mile long, with like this 14-mile long aura. So the thing looks absolutely massive flying through space, and it's supposedly metallic. And it's flying under its own volition. There's no other reason. There's no orbit. There's no reason for it to be moving. So therefore it is moving purposefully. That's why they say that it's a very, what's the term they used? It's like dangerous. It's hostile. They call it hostile because of potential violent. There's no other reason why it would be directly coming toward us at such a speed, unless it was hostile. What's it coming to do? Save someone? You know what I mean? What's it coming to do? Do, you know, a long-term emergency evacuation? And, you know, a lot of things come to mind. Like, first, I have started thinking about this. The first thing that my first inclination was, they sent something out. When I say they, I'm talking about the people who fuck with us on this, with all of us on this planet, play us every day for their fucking amusement, but also for their solidified axis of power, where they know they have taken on jobs that aren't theirs inherently. They use the Kabbalah and all this other shit, right? But it ties into religions, it ties into Mormonism, it ties into Islam, it ties into Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, it ties into all the same goddamn story over and over again. And the Bible, about this prophecy of this is your law, this is what you follow. As long as you follow this law, this God, who's actually a piece of shit, it's like, you could say, depending on how you look at it, you've got a God called Satan. You've got a God called Yahweh. You have a God called Lucifer, depending on who you are and what you get out of it. And it's like, oh, guess what? Those are the gods of choice. But that they are signets or signatures of a time-space sequence of events, of an energy movement that is basically encapsulating one ideation or one God. So, my initial on this thing, I don't even know what they're calling it. Oumuamua 2, I don't fucking know. But they gotta be calling it something. I put up a couple articles down below on that on a community post, but you can check that out. But there's more coming out every day on this, because it's very big news. And what I thought is, oh, they sent this fucking thing out there. They're misreporting seeing it in the observations, and it's circling right back around. And then when you put that all together, you're like, well, could they have sent something out using these extraordinary mechanisms, gateways, if you will, where they were able to send something out into a particular point and then give us a sort of death clock paradox, right? Almost like creating a three-body problem. Like, this is way too much like the three-body problem. It's not weird, right? But then just now, just very recently, I had the thought of this, and that is that they seeded us, that is very much like Prometheus in a sense, the original, right, idea of Prometheus, leaving the alien thing out for now, Scott, right? That's coming, that they are coming back around, right? That this is like, I don't know, it sort of kind of ties into this galactic federation that's been talked about, but you got to understand all of this, all these are lies. They don't owe us the truth. It doesn't even have to have remnants of the truth. And that's why they keep us thinking that they have to, right? This oligarch or whatever the fuck they assume themselves as, that going through this process, this blueprint, that they have to follow by the way of governance of some sort of moral aptitude. They don't have to. They've outright lied, and they've crushed that over and over again. It's this gentlemanly sort of thing. But no, it keeps us from going into utter chaos. And the irony is, what is chaos? Chaos is when we rise up in the streets and take back our power. That's the chaos. Because then we'll fully see that they took over the government, that we've been believing a lie quite intentionally, quite on purpose, and that now that we have stood up, they have taken our money that we pay taxes and slave over to create the very devices that would kill us, to reset everything. And it was all supplicating. It was all due to, well, we're alive for another day, who cares? Right? We live for another day, who cares? That's most people's attitudes. And when I say attitude, I'm saying what promotes them through the day. Right now, I'm thinking, weird. Maybe it's not weird though. But I'm thinking 1987. That's where my mind, my spirit, my energy, it might well be in 1987. It's bizarre. 1987, yeah. And yeah, that's weird because all these really strange occurrences did happen around the age of 43 going on 44 years old for me. It's like this culmination. So when I look at it and I go back and I go, oh wow, 1987 for me, that loop, it's coming up on, 2027 to 2032, like right around that area. To me, 43 to 44 years plus my age at that time. So it's just coming up in the next few years. If you follow what I'm saying, 2013, I was 43 to 44. Right. So we'll see what happens here. Time is going by very rapidly, very quickly. And, I saw it years ago and I tried to write this down on Esoteric Principles of Light, where it's like I was going over the dates. I could see it very clearly at the time. This is back in 2015. And I saw all the way up to 2034, but I didn't see anything else after that. But that is the end date. When I gave a fuck. When I was doing all this weird shit that the people are doing now. Where it was like you could see it before it ever happened. You could see it before it took place.
demonic energy is not allowed. Demons aren't welcome here. And that seems to be what they do, is they like to ride on other people's lives and derail their lives and often destroy their potential and then blame it on you. When you were walking through a valley blind, didn't even know where you were put into that valley. So, I mean, that famous paraphrasing, obviously, but that famous quote by a so-called Jesus Christ, they know not what they do. They know not where they are, what they do, what they are. In other words, they are thrown into a world quite intentionally and then blamed and murdered. There ain't no hero mothers. There's mothers who put on a big display, the mama bear, right, for other people. The mama bear has to be seen as a mama bear. And as long as the child goes along with it like a little pulp, like that's another thing, that movie that I watched yesterday, the killing of a unicorn. The death of the unicorn, whatever the fuck it was called. She agreed to Paul Rudd. She's like, okay, this single parent act, all right, I'll go along with it, Dad. We're gonna turn this into a meme. And the characters are always switched, right? Because it would really be the father that would have to go along with the daughter on social media to be able to play a dad, right? To be able to genericize and play a role. And as long as you play that role and you show yourself, it's like coming up with your hands up versus guns raised, right? As you're going. There is no hope for the widow's son, right? It's saying, I supplicate. I'll be the meme. What do you want to do with my image in order to manipulate the masses, right? And it really isn't even that important, because they can make you do things, right? They can jump into your body and do this shit. But it's that you will corrupt under your own volition. That's where they want to bring you, to this place of the cross. When you deny Jesus, you're denying the Messiah within yourself. You're denying the purity within you. And most people, they get it really close to where they can generate, regenerate, and create people that seem to exemplify attributes of purity, and they're absolutely not pure at all. And it seems like that's one of the main product points that they're trying to establish, particularly with Mary, in the Gospel of Mary. The Vatican is to erect and resurrect this false goddess notion, because the goddess is a lesser role. She's already turned. She can be used in any way, and this is what the Whore of Babylon is all about. It's to get the masses to individually and as an en masse, en masse, to have them choose the lesser role. To basically be so angry at purity that they're trying to defile it, flip it off like Sodom and Gomorrah, and saying, look, we have our houses, we have our families, we live by way of what we choose as a middle ground, and we're able to also intensify our
supplicate, supplement, right, our hedonistic desires. And as long as we show up for work and pay our taxes and pretend to play the role. So this is what gets into this Luciferian agenda, right? That we are, in a sense, from a pietist sense, that we are corrupt. That we couldn't be good. And that ultimately, even when we have power, we would choose the wrong thing unless we take on the moniker of a father, a brother, right? A blacksmith, right? You get it? That we take on titleship, and that's what the master key system talks about, is that you are a theoretical abstract ego unless you take on the role. But the truth is, those roles don't exist. And when you choose one role or meme or play over the reality of the purity within you that you ultimately have to sacrifice in all ways. You have to sacrifice it physically, spiritually, right? But it actually is according to an order. And that's what the points to the pentagram are all about. That's what the Star of David is that you start out with purity. You begin with impurity, right? And then you follow a process, and they say, look, even when you begin with impurity and you follow a principle protocol, as long as you're following a system, you're following a God, and that is our God, they're saying. So if you understand what I'm saying there, put a little apple cider vinegar in here. So I noticed that my spit gets thicker. It's not like the lactic acid cycle. I mean, I'm just walking, but it's like. But yeah, there's like a. You can feel it when you're going glycolytic. And I felt a little energy surge, right, to where I felt my body just kind of picking up. And though my shoulder that broke when I was 9, someone broke without my permission and derailed my life. And I was already having a terrible life and didn't appreciate that. And I was already under major spiritual attack at that time. I didn't appreciate that. Yeah, 9-year-old kid, I was under heavy demonic attack. I could feel it, and I had no one to talk to about it. Just ignorant. And these people that were supposedly my care providers were actually people who sold me out. Very demonic people, quite intentionally. And they'd be like, oh, no. And it's like, look what you did with your life. By their fruits you shall know them. They didn't love me. I knew they didn't love me. And I knew I didn't love them. Then you're wondering, what the fuck am I even doing with these people? They're disgusting. Right? So some people are given more. And they want that disparate, compartmentalized notion hung there. It's something they can use, you know. But yeah, I'm feeling like I can almost like reshape and roll myself, like with the carnivore. There's less of you, right? When you begin to add sugar back in, everything's hydrated. it's like there's rivers that dried up that are suddenly revived, right? And your glandular system starts to open up. And you're working on another level. You're aware, you're alive, you're of the flesh. So much of the flesh involves water, you know? And so when you talk about being maybe at the same exact crude weight of musculature, yeah, like I feel my body readjusting in areas that have really bothered me for quite some time, like where I'm able to kind of rolf myself and reshape myself a little bit. So the main goal will be to train today. I can already tell I'm gonna have to, you know, get cooking my chicken and my rice. I'm gauging myself and realizing that I'm not going to get there going this way unless I begin to change some things around. And I do enjoy fasting in the morning, but then by the time I eat, I'm very dyspeptic because I'm taking in the chicken and the rice. And so I'm thinking about what Rich Pino was talking about, that Mark Bell put up a video about. Of course, this is him back in 2017 or, you know, whenever this was that he said this, way before Rich Pino passed away, right? But he had realized that he doesn't have to take in as much protein as he thought, and that he's essentially eating a very large protein meal of 80 grams of protein in the evening. That he would save his chicken or steak for one meal at night, but then go for rice all day long by itself. And that he could train this way. He wasn't burping up, he wasn't feeling dyspeptic. So Mark Bell brought this up, so I'm trying this on. I'm trying this on today. And I'm doing I did my supplements. I'm doing just like I consider sticky fun spit here. I consider that's good stuff's coming up. But really thick. So I'm doing nothing but a decent portion of beef liver. Nothing that's going to be toxic in my system, and well under the recommended amount for a daily amount. Nowhere near even a 16th of a pound, really. Maybe right around there. Maybe right around 16th of a pound. Nowhere near an eighth of a pound now. I still have half of it is almost left from 1 pound, so that tells you. And I cooked it 6 days ago, and it's still good. I didn't cook it in oil or anything. It's not even dry at this point. It's been kept refrigerated, and I cook it pretty well. It's not making me sick. But I'm noticing a good reaction with the vitamin C, right? Where it's actually working to boost my immune system, whereas when I've been on carnivore, I didn't have any of those typical signs of vitamin C use. Like where I would feel my immune system kicking in, as in the past. But I always, back in the day, focused on a carbohydrate-rich diet. The addition of carbohydrates at a large amount, because that's what I'm functioning off of. That's essentially what I'm living off of now. It's strange to say, because it's almost been a week already. This big junction point, this change, has given me a much more youthful look. Things that looked really weird, like this globular fatty part of my left side, is almost completely minimized, reduced, and doesn't even really look like it's anything. I'll do some pictures in the coming days. Maybe I'll do some today. I feel so balanced and functional in a sense, but back to this base that I haven't felt for many, many years. That ties into a youthful vitality. So that could be why I'm kind of reflecting on 1987 a little bit. But then the way I'm eating also is not just free will, me changing. There is a deterministic track to this type of thing, right? This is all the boring stuff, like, but the reason I even turned on the cameras for these walks a couple of years ago is like, or is it? Is it boring? Like maybe you're boring. Maybe you want to see things that don't actually exist. Maybe you want to see some faggot ass dude doing burpees for 2 hours, talking about no sucky, and then it's obvious the guy's the total homo. He's wearing his homo shorts and stuff and saying that stuff, but battling with his own self. It's obvious why he's doing it. For me, I'm extremely straightforward about my workouts and my walk. And I'm going to start implementing more negative repetitions, which I've always wanted to do. I have worked out very close to what Mike Mentzer represents and says it's about, but really what, like the negative repetition is about time and retention, but what it's saying is, like, there is this example that this Arthur, can't remember the guy's name, but he put Mike Mentzer through all his workouts, right, through Nautilus and all this. You can look him up. And he basically is talking about this guy who weighs 287 pounds trying to do a pull-up, and of course the guy couldn't do a pull-up. So they take him, and obviously I don't know all the details about it, but most of these are put up and then they've been put under heavy scrutiny and wild speculation about the results of all these Nautilus tests, but they're very interesting, and they're even revolutionary till today, in a lot of ways, because refuting them, you know, diets were different, people were different, and it wasn't even that long ago. But this guy is he's trying to do pull-ups, and then he couldn't even do a negative pull-up. Right? So, and it's like these reverse pull-ups that they talk about. So I'm going to start doing those reverse pull-ups because I used to do those. And I'm telling you, they do work, and they're almost like they activate more back, but it's almost like a pull over. a dumbbell pullover, but because of your hand position, you're really activating quite a bit more of your lats, your back, right? You're locking the position in. So I'm gonna start doing some things like that. I'll even think about like doing the TRX, and then I'll remember what I did years prior, just like the last couple of years, and I'll go, I like doing bar dips, pull-ups, jump squats, right? And maybe side laterals, you know, and push-ups. Like, there's just something about it going, I could do this workout anywhere, and even when I have the suspension trainer in the other room, a lot of times I'll choose just to do that, to just get on this really basic base program. But after 4 days of them holding this fat ass guy up and helping him do a negative pull up, a pull down, I suppose it would be, a come down from a pull up. So going into the negative aspect, you know, you have the eccentric, right? And so going into the negative aspect of the movement, the guy within 4 days was able to then perform almost 5 pull-ups on his own in the positive, just off the reinforcement of getting of involving the negative muscles. So it's a motor neuron and a motor pathway that's being established here. I just killed a little gnat fly. It would have become a fly. Seems like it's coming out of that corner, actually. So I also haven't, so I've not stopped any of my supplements. I've just gotten onto a nice middle ground with them. And I haven't ceased from walking or training. So this is going on. So I've established a base. And right now, I'm in hypertrophic territory. It takes that long. It takes a good 6 weeks of progressive overload, if you want to call it that, right? Dynamic progressive overload, where you're doing more, you're able to sustainably stabilize muscle movements. And my shoulder's been bothering me because I'm actually hitting the musculature in that area that's going to support it, right? From multiple angles. So I expect to see a symmetrical balancing out going on here too. So I'm primed. This is a time where it seems like this is a moment, like financially things couldn't be worse. There's a shift, but then there's a call to say, when you say you're going to stand up cosmically and the universe is saying stand up, don't you understand that when you stand up out of the rubble, it's affecting everything around you? Keep standing up. Keep going through the process. Don't just start looking. It's kind of like Superman flying through the sky and then looking and trying to freak himself out. Well, look how high I am. Look at all the people. It's like, you don't have to revel in yourself, just like when I would use this description of the sun shining. Sun isn't aware of its rays. There's an awareness of it, of its length, of its breadth, of its distance, right, of the scope of the solar flares, but it is, right? So in order for you to be natural in your being, in your becoming, in the phenomenon itself, you have to go through the process, you know? You have to be able to minimize that down to like a 20% of your total awareness. Like, you need to be in the moment and not be feeling sorry for yourself from an existential sense. To put yourself through that total trial, through that total pain, and then to relish in it and go, this is where I exist. this is where I live. I misinterpreted it through the world's eyes, through the filter of the worldview, right? So it gets into Weltanschauung, right? Weltanschauung Creek, the world and the worldview, or Welt, if you want to be more specific. So I'm finding that my body's response, the amino acids that are being involved, particularly the glycolysis and the ATP production, I am balanced. And I think when you are balanced, you're the universe is aware of you and you're under the greatest scrutiny and the greatest attack because everyone's jealous of that. That's how imbalanced the world is. So you could say that the imbalance of an individual forces the collective to create the balance. So it's almost like if you were to look at an ant and go, well, that ant is trying to support the entire bridge network on its own. And other ants are walking over it to do so. But what if all the ants collectively were in a collective mind? Well, that type of hive mind is what they're trying to ignite. But it's only for the, like I say, it's only for the vector, the dynamic force of an existential engineering application. In other words, they're thinking through the temporal, carnal, corporeal, physical markers that they're not seeing, but they're aware of the spiritual aspect, but they're trying to denote and de-intensify the causality from a spiritual sense and take the energy from the phenomenon and put it toward the mechanical instrumentation, full well knowing that the spiritual is what promotes and causes and animates the whole thing to do what it does. And what else are you supposed to do in the day? It's like, of course you're supposed to sort of rolf and readjust, and you know you're recovering from an assaultive night's sleep. The only way you could get to sleep is to curl your ass up and fuck your spine up. And it's like you go through this over and over and over again. When you can get to a place where you can just fall asleep, you take that for granted. Particularly when you've been coddled and never had any issues with any of that. You haven't cared about anything, never been pressed to care. And you existing that way is important, just like to what I'm talking about, to these pervading powers that assume themselves as being in power. Yeah, and for a while my back was not, it was almost like it was fused, like I just couldn't pop it. So I'm noticing that the support of the musculature is allowing me to become more fluid. And that's a good thing. I think that's a good sense of what's happening here, is that the induction of the water, the glycolysis, the storage of the glycogen has, over the past week, and particularly today, created this fluidity, more water balance, a place for the water to go. I feel the muscle. We took yesterday off. I feel the balance, I feel it drawing in, you know. Let's see what happens, you know. But I'm already thinking full body. And the squats, like I would like to be doing more, but I'm still building up a base to that. Like me just doing squats several times a week with this suspension trainer with body weight, the knees are sore from all the walking and so forth, but they're enjoying the stretch, they're enjoying the burn. When I look at my legs, they're obviously leaner, they're obviously more muscular. And the frequency of training them will increase. But I have to remember how I packed on muscle in the past, and that was just force, right? You get into the actual force where you're not, like Mike Menser brought this up, like, you know, doing sets where you're, you know, you plan it out and you're only able to get 6 to 8, you're gonna push yourself to get 10 versus you underestimated and you went, wow, you get up to 8 to 10 and now you're doing 13, 14, 15 reps, maybe even more. Enjoy that, but then realize that next time, well, probably not next time. You're probably going to do less reps with the same weight the next time, but this is the strange way that it's kind of like watching a flower bloom, and then you speed up the footage to the time lapse, and you see that what was really subtle, where the flower didn't even look like it was like, is it growing or dying, right? But when you speed it up, you see that there's this flux. So a lot of people, they lose the idea of that flux with themselves, where it seems like you're getting weaker, but you're looking too closely at it, and you have to be able to look at the grander cycle. That's what we're avoiding, is because it then says, no, it's going to take you a year to get here. Oh, fuck, I would have given up by then. That's the whole point of why we see things so detrimentally to immaturity in the moment. And that the moment really is like 3 days prior, 3 days from then. That's our moment. That's our week. That's what that week's put on us. That's what we can conceptualize. When you begin to think, and this is what they like to rub your face, is we think physically. It's like, well, if you can't break free from the slave morality, you're being forced to think on a non-physical level. Right? So they're basically saying that they are capable, the oligarch or whatever the fuck they are, right? I don't even like to say they. It's like the annoying pieces of shit that think they're running everything. Okay? They think they think that they can assert the pure principles that and capitalize on them and say it isn't purity that reigns supreme, it's impurity, right? But the truth is that the pure, even recognizing just one thing, and that is purity, and not being able to go through the principal attributes, being blocked from that, are greater than the impure. Right? In other words, the errors need to be erased. But we're ushering their names forward, calling their names out just in the Freemasonic lodges, right? And time's going by, and there's a historicity to it, and yet it shouldn't have existed not one day. So we're going to start making some advice. And then, you know what I think I'll do is I'm going to try the Rich Pina way of doing this, which is going to be, it's going to be rice all day, out there fasting and walking. Get the energy up to train, and then do more of a Mike Mentor style workout where I'm focusing much closer on total burnout. But I always do. It may not look like it, but I'm always pushing an extra couple of reps. It might not appear that way from the outside, but it is. I mean, I'm a 56-foot guy. And you say that I'm trained and not trained because I have been training over the course of the last couple of years, but I've also lapsed a couple of times where I just started getting drunk. And I was thinking about that the other night. There's a big correlation with carbohydrates and alcohol through our evolutionary pathways, right? Because the sense of there not being enough and us not being able to sustain that. I'll feel better after my next month's order. And the training is always the goal. Like no matter what you do, no matter what your diet looks like, and I'll be taking some pictures because my pumps are obviously way better. The hardness underneath, but to notably see body fat decreases, and I'm just feeling like it's coming to my mind where it's like maybe you should go take your weighted jump rope and go in the park and do VO2 intervals until finally, maybe a couple months down the road, who knows, maybe sooner, maybe a couple weeks from now, because things, when you're fit and you have these epiphanies and you just do it, you realize, oh, why am I not doing this or that? Well, it's because I'm tight. Well, stretch. And when you start to advocate for yourself and move and function and see, you can't do that on form. You just can't do it. You don't have the fluidity. You don't have the fluidity. You know, be like water kind of thing, you know, Bruce Lee thing. It's like, you gotta have parts to be like water. I think, I don't know if I was watching Mike Mentzer or if Mike Mentzer was talking about Bruce Lee or something. I don't know why I'm correlating the two of those. But I think he may have been talking about Bruce Lee as if he was a drug addict, where he wanted to know how he got as lean as he did. And he was looking into it, and it was like clear that the guy was talking about meth and shit, and then you look at his body and you go, this is what the Nazis were talking about in order to exemplify and bring up this sort of physicality and physical superiority. The mind has to be freed from where it was prior to, right? And you have to be in the moment. But when you get into the speed and the agility and the quickness, right? There's a very animistic aspect to this. And it does get into the spiritual realm. Because it's like, what are you inviting? If you're inviting this force, then you have to have a clear, pure house and say, I need to be remade. And then it gives you the rules that you have to live by. Right? Tusk. Remember that? Tusk? It gives you the rules to live by. Primal. Cartoon. Animated series, Primal. I think Tusk, I think it was Fleetwood Mac. I have the bands that I like, Love Low. Love Low. He lost his wife a few years back. And other half of Low. Not to disrespect any other musicians or people that were mastering or recording on that. I'm not that aware. I'm not that, I enjoy the music, but I don't ever get into fandom about anything. If I had money, I would. If I ever had money, I would. Would have gone to concerts, would have enjoyed and really capturing in that, the energy, the essence. But I couldn't, never could afford it. Never put myself before others that I love. Never did that. Never mentally did that. And that's important because that I sacrificed myself and ultimately lost myself and corrupted. But then, was I?
It was kind of like it was all in your head. It was all an act. You never went through with this stuff. Not really. You were on the fringe. You wanted to know, now you know. So anything that could be said about me, I was riding on the fringe the whole way. I never went into the nexus of corruption. Anything that can be said about me, it has to be embellished and it has to be taken to a next level that's not true. Because I never breached that. When they want to act like that I have breached that, they're now lying. And they're 100% against the factual aspect of the computational system and the networking system and the pure state. They're not like, when people are using witchcraft, they think they can get away with anything, and it's like, there's laws and rules. That's why Gardner, Wicca, he was a real sellout. You know, you could say he was a warlock, or you could say he was a druid. If he was a druid, then he disgraced himself by becoming a warlock. He was a fallen. Right. He supplicated to the goddess. He supplicated to Samsara. To what we know as feudalism. Let them eat cake, and I was just thinking about cake. It's the first time where I was like, cake? I polished off a whole thing of waffle cones last night. Just sugar and flour. There's very little fat in it. I ate oatmeal. Just really carbohydrates. Very little fat in it. And different types of fat where you're not looking at the same types of fat that's gonna be, you know, it's just to kick off those millimole. So that's why exercise is so important. If you're really at the end of the day only taking in 5 or 10 grams of fat, and it's occurring right from very low fat sources that aren't considered fatty foods, even if fat is reduced or the attempt to completely take it out. Right, so I'm on an ultra low fat diet, and will be for quite some time. I will be on a low fat diet for quite some time. High carbohydrate, low fat diet. So we're making rice right now, and what I expect from this is to be able to train longer, to have a better training focus, and to train more intensely. And then, based on prior experience, which I have quite a bit, that goes back to many, many years with specifically with carbohydrates, because I was on the 90s bodybuilding diet. I wasn't doing anything but adhering to referencing around low fat. So like even when I would do higher fat and bulk up, I was aware at that time that I was eating higher fat and therefore would be putting on more fat, right? But I didn't really understand the intricacies of that everybody gets today of insulin, glucose spikes, and how to best use that and really re-identify, recertify, reclaim the slow wave sleep cycle epicenter of when you begin to start to re-experience and put yourself back into reality. Because when that chronobiological clock is thrown off, you're not in reality. And you can't therefore reshape reality, right? Or you can't bend your reality and contort your reality toward your will, right? So you really need to get back into the purification, purifying efforts, and without being on a nutrition plan that offers you all the nutrients that you require, particularly not eating the bounty, like when it does get into Cain and Abel, and it's to infuse this and talk about it is not going off on a tangent. You have Cain slaughtering animals and eating animals and saying, look, you could live off of this, carnivore. You have Abel going, look, the bounty from the earth, right? Vegetarian, vegan,
you can get it all from the earth, right? And then you have the tree of life and the tree of knowledge going, well, let's do both. So to imply an omnivorous way of living, that's nothing small. It's very spiritual, right? And then to ultimately choose one path, that's a whole nother thing. Because now that we're able to isolate amino acids and still respect the orthomolecular aspects of this to make right? And then to create a balance with the synergistic actions that aren't the only thing that you should be doing that's out of the ordinary. And the diet even dictates this, is your training. Like you should get stronger and stronger and more capable, but then your diet should look like, this is the odd thing, right? You could take somebody who's in really pretty bad shape, and the only difference between you and this obese person over here is the fact that you're eating sugar, fruit, sugar-based foods that are exclusively sugar, while this person is spiking their insulin up, eating fat, pastries, and things like this. Right? Cereals. Well, processed cereals. Like you're eating the cornflakes while they're eating the Fruity Pebbles and in whole milk, right? And you might even you might even drink whole raw milk at some point, but you separate it, right? Which I don't know about that. I don't know the legitimacy to that. I mean, I could see how you could really benefit from this, and I know that there's metabolic, like it will increase your metabolism. It's great for your thyroid, like whole raw milk is really amazing, okay? But you still have your galactose and some of the other things going on there. But the whole raw aspect of this, and when you take it, right? Like this would be obviously something you would do, maybe even with cheeses and things like this for active recovery, right? Where you're trying to really boost up a lot of those cultures. And I would say the perfect thing, this would be kind of a healing mechanism where you go into eating fermented foods, sauerkraut, things like this, right? And you'd probably be shading up a storm. And then this would probably work to balance out a high citrus, sort of summer style fruitarian, right? Fruitarian or fruitarian, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I always knew it as fruitarian diet, where you're focusing on pineapples and citrus, and balancing it out with melon and cantaloupe, and keeping some harder stool with the bananas and maybe some coconut and things like this, right? And there's a flux in the flow, an ebb and a flow of availability. And those things, unfortunately, can't be available to you unless you have a fuck of a lot of money to spend on it. So today, what we're doing is we're prioritizing the training and going in and doing our base training. For me, for a little while, I was like, I gotta do single leg or splits, Bulgarian type squats or, lunges, split squats, doing it on the suspension trainer. I might do that, but for right now, I'm going, nah, dude, just build a base. Do as many sets as you can, 4 or 5 sets of squats, and try to do that at least a few times a week. And really train past your comfort zone and get a good burn going. Feel your quads working. Do full squats. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm getting used to that. I'm just doing it. I'm not having not jumping ahead on any level. Right? And it's kept and maintained. Those were maintaining my weight even when I was on carnivore. Like where I would have dipped way down, I was building muscle tissue in my lower body. I can see it happen because I lost so much muscle in my lower body, and that's your metabolism. So I really upgraded myself on that, where I was given the opportunity to be upgraded back up to where I should physiologically have been for all the training that I've been. And you're not going to get back those hard-earned merits without carbohydrates. You're not going to be able to do it. Training requires carbohydrates. Requires a lot of carbohydrates. So the surplus is what makes your muscle grow. The surplus is what brings in the tissue repair. The surplus is what gives you energy to go in really intensely and train the next day. The surplus is everything. And if you can really turn the tides on this, you can pack on, like Mike Mentzer noted, a shit ton of weight, right? We're here. This guy's putting on 62 pounds. I've done that with, I've done that. I got up to like 200, I might have even done more than that, but I put on 45 or 50 pounds overnight, and they took me off TRT overnight, and then in like 6 weeks I put on like 60 pounds, 65 pounds. Went from really athletic and, you know, almost like where I'm at right now to completely huge, monstrous, undeniably, right? And when you begin to look at it and you have done PEDs in the past, you realize, oh shit, this is what that looks like. Like at first you're like, I never could have done this on my own. But then you start to think, well, if I was to do this without PEDs, what would that look like? And you have to obviously supply a great amount of stimulus. So last workout, even my lower lats are still feeling it from that time. And I've been hitting, like I couldn't do any more dips. I've been doing chest for several workouts, really pushing it. And that was one of the first workouts where I'm like, well, I'm fit. I've been working out for months, and I got to the point where I couldn't do any more dips. That's awesome. So what Mike Mentzer's saying is, if you were to just keep going 3 or 4 reps beyond that, right, to where you're forcing yourself, even doing like negatives, and you're really sore the next day, well, you're leveling up to a level of soreness, and that is where you're going to get your hypertrophy. Like every time you think you're hitting the wall and you're not hitting the wall, and if you go a little further and you get a little sorer, it'll equal out, and what this surplus of those calories you're taking in and the surplus of that training, you understand what I'm saying? You have to have a surplus. Well, carnivore doesn't give you any surplus. And it's not to bash carnivore, it's to say that now you're producing just more ketones. Will I do it? I'll probably do it again. Yeah, I'll probably do it again. I'll probably do it till when I get quite a bit more muscle on, I'll probably do carnivore again to lean out very quickly. I could see how with the addition of a lot of lean muscle on me, where I'm already lean and I haven't put on any real body fat, that going on carnivore. So do I have a body weight gain? No. I'm balancing with my appetite, and I'm eating a lot more. And so already I can see that with the addition of like fat-free, like cornflakes, oatmeal, next month, maybe I'll even add some canned fruits on there, but primarily I'll be getting like rice, and I'll be making sure to get everything that I need, and chicken. I'm just gonna get a shit ton of lean, skinless, boneless chicken breast. But I also could, and I still do, I already have. I've got quite a few pounds still in the freezer of, like, it would last me a while that I can take the skin off of. But what I'm kind of saving it for is using the chicken, the drumsticks, to go back into ketosis. Like to do this glycolysis for 4 to 6 weeks and really try to put on as much lean muscle tissue as I can, and then switch it over to back over to carnivore. I'm using these modalities. So we got that rice cooking. So when I'm out walking with my kids or going on a hike or a trail hike, all this turning that I do equates to walking over rocks, around rocks, things like that. So this 10 paces one way, 10 paces the other way, 9 really, 8 to 10. Sometimes I'll take little paces, 11, but it's usually a median of around 8 to 10, right? And sometimes it's just 8 because I'll walk all the way to the corner. And I've measured it. I've measured how much I'm walking. And you'd be surprised just in a few hours how it stacks up. I don't have the inconvenience of dealing with people, stopping at stoplights, having to slow down. So therefore, I never really feel the need to even speed up. In the beginning, I would jog. I've showed myself. I would do side steps, side laterals. No, I'm doing that type of thing on the TRX. I'm doing that in the other room with the training that I'm doing. And I'm going to train harder and harder. But I hear that rice. I'm going to take off the top and lift it off. Because what ends up happening is it just. I typically like to max it out and put the absolute, maximum amount of rice so I don't have to do it again real soon. We still got 15, 20 pounds of rice. And quite honestly, all I really would have to do, like, my son would cover the rice. It's not even that expensive. I think I got this rice for like a really special price. I think it was like $11, $12 for 20 pounds of rice. I think it was like half off or something. And it's the Mahatma rice. It's good rice. I'm already craving it. So here I'm exercising a balance. And I was initially going, okay, I'm really gonna push this and try to get my arms as big as I can. And so my focus, even on working full body, my focus has been on get those arms up, and then I noticed, I'm like, holy crap, my arms have really come up. So, but I've been working my whole body to get more development in my chest. I realize that I'm going to have to, when I'm doing the TRX presses, I'm going to have to start coming in and really feeling it. And I'm also, but I've been pushing myself. Like I couldn't even finish my last set dips out the other day. And I think that's actually a good sign where you go, holy crap. The only reason that I didn't work out yesterday, and I love working out every day, that's the difference with GIT training, is that I will push myself, but I'll save a little bit because I enjoy, like, you have to ask yourself, would Mike Mincer still be here today? This is hypothetical, right? Or Rich Pina, for that matter, if they took a more moderate approach. And would, over time, they have been able to get older and even develop a very youthful and even more balanced physique because they enjoyed the training. Instead of going after too much too soon, right? To really stabilize and balance themselves out. Right? So that's what GIT training, gradual intensity training, is for me. Right? Is that I will save like this. This is the perfect, like, where they might go, well, that's ridiculous. why would you just walk it off? You're just losing muscle. You're just losing this, and it's like, have you done it? Right. So they're both dead, and they both died before they were 50 years old. Was that their goal? Is to get as big as they possibly could, to push things so extremely that they died young and burned out? I don't think they were both intelligent people. I don't think that's what they thought about. I think they would rather still be here. You know? They really never got to mature into older men. And even with all the bullshit I've done, I could just die right now. So, I mean, you can't sit on one side and act like you are superior in some way. What I'm saying is if they took a little different approach, right, and focused in a little bit more on the aerobic, maybe they would have lived as long as Jack LaLanne did. Speculation. Just allowing a little bit of flexibility, a little flux, a little flow. But here I am, attracted more toward doing negatives, right? Like Mike Menzer, pushing myself even harder and focusing on the negative. And then here I am doing Rich Pina's rice diet. And if I could afford it, I would be doing PEDs right now, I'll be honest with you. It's been 7 or 8 years. I think I actually did them about 6 years ago, but I wasn't training. I was actually eating McDonald's. I was doing M1T. I was trying to actually kind of kill myself off. I didn't care. Like 8 years ago, that was the last real cycle I did that was effed me up, and I knew it was killing me off. That did. I could feel my heart. And I was around Mike Menzer and Rich Pina's age, and I was really buffed. I have pictures of that, and I wasn't even really training that much. I was just starting to flex, and then I knew that when I put together a training facility, which I did, ended up keeping it in storage for a few years, and it just made me broke. Not even a few years. Just hanging on to that was just terrible. There was never any assistance for doing the right thing, trying to do the right thing. So I know where these guys are coming from. You know, when they burn it all and they just go, while I'm alive, I'm going to do whatever I can. You know, to consider something like, oh, maybe you want to be around longer, maybe you want to, right? So self-correcting is important. And if you're still alive, you have the opportunity. I was just thinking about chlorophyll and a couple other things that I really like to take that seem to really catalyze well with carbohydrates. At least when you're in a glycolytic diet, not necessarily during a certain time. But like what I'm doing right now is I am fasting. I'm doing a morning fast and walk. All I've had is a small bit of beef liver, which I consider my supplements because I'm getting the huge, you know, that alone, that probably would have been a $80 handful of supplements. Even if I just took the desiccated beef liver tablets, it would have cost me $30 to $40 a week, maybe for 2 weeks. But yeah, that's a minimum of $20 to $30 a week that I get for, God, it cost me $1.50 a week to eat as much beef liver as I take in each day. It cost me $1.50 a week. Changed my life, changed my mind, changed my body. I wish I always knew about it. And that's the beauty, is that we know more these days. So I'm trying, and I'm pushing myself hard. It may not look like it, but I do this every single day for
for a minimum of 3 hours a day. A minimum of 3 hours a day. Let's see how this rice is coming along. And I enjoy doing like, I enjoy doing 8 hours. Yeah, I enjoy walking for a good 8 hours. So I'm not reinventing the wheel.
I like Mike Mentzer's approach where it's like, it's the same exercises every damn day, and I did this, and my arms were
Absolutely massive doing this, and that was, I stopped doing arm exercises when I was about 26 years old. I added a little water into that because what ends up happening is the rice doesn't get as full and fluffy. And then the thing clicks because it gets hot enough. But, so I kind of like cook it for an extra 5-10 minutes. Because the rice cookers tend to cook them a little too fast and can't fit quite enough water in there. They're a little small for the amount of rice that I put in. That's all. I'm trying to cook too much rice in there. I'm trying to cook it right up to the top. Rice cookers are great. So I'm getting everything that I need in. I backed off the sardines and the eggs. I have 50 eggs in the refrigerator, and those will be good for another fucking month or more. Got those just a couple of weeks ago. The last ones I tested it in Walmart, and they lasted me a month and a half. From the time that I ordered, went through 3 flats of 60. Then, so I'll do a massive number of eggs every single day when I'm on carnivore, at least 5 days a week. Same training. So I was talking about Mike Mentzer, and I did a very similar workout, and I don't even think I was exposed to his heavy duty training. I was thinking about from another perspective where somebody that I had admired as a youth that was really, he was using steroids and told everybody he wasn't. So of course that's going to be the guy that you emulate yourself over, right? But he would go on a bulking plan where you'd go 5-6 reps. Like you couldn't do any more reps, you'd do 5 or 6 reps to max on just basic compound exercises. And I talked about that, I talked about doing that. And the combination of doing a pressing movement, a pulling movement, and a squat is just intense. And what I found, it was kind of weird. Like I didn't even add in military presses till later. And they actually worked against me until I started to create a better balance. But I added military presses in several weeks into just those 3 exercises. And every now and then I would do heavy curls and stuff, but I found it's not even necessary. It's messing with my bench, it's messing with my bent over row. Why even do it? And then occasionally I would work in a pull down, right? But I would go in at a certain time of day where nobody was in there, no one was using the squat rack and stuff. It was midday, and I'd be able to do that 5 days a week. I wouldn't do any ancillary exercises. The reason I would go put 4 or 5 days aside is because sometimes if I felt like it, and my bench was really good, but it just felt off, I wouldn't even do the squats. I'd be like, okay, I'm coming back tomorrow and doing the squats, or I'm coming back the next day and doing the bent over rows, you know? And then more and more I was able to push it more no matter what.
like I got to this idea where it's like, if I'm only gonna come in here and do 5 or 6 sets of 5 or 6 reps, I have to make this shit count. So I would just load on more and more weight until you end up repping out with considerable amount of weight, you know. And I never had a spot, so. But I'd have people that were on steroids try to outdo me, and they weren't even that far ahead of me. They were just doing 50, 60 pounds, maybe 50 to 75 pounds more than me. So if I was juicing, and they knew that. They knew this guy's doing it right, this guy's clean. You know? My upper body's already getting greedy. Like, this image of Mike Mentzer doing those reverse grip pull downs is just in my head. I'm like, that's what I need to be doing. It challenges and it hits your biceps from a whole different angle. I think it forces your lats to come in, and it's not really as much teres major, right? And it would tie in really well with what I did the other day, which is I finished up with stiff arm push downs. It didn't seem like I was doing much, but I'm telling you, I felt every bit of it. And those are areas that I haven't been hitting enough. Really brings out the integrity to the supportive muscles around your rotator cuff. The supraspinatus and the teres minor, and then the rhomboids, it kind of ties into a certain muscle balance. So yeah, I'm gonna want to do some of those today, obviously squats. I don't know, maybe I'll cut back on the number of reps at first and do I'll do a superband squat and see how many I can get. I'm thinking like, why not reduce the number of reps and sets and say I could only get 8 to 12 reps, or even 6 to 10 reps, right? Doing a superband squat. Why not? Why not do that, right? And then maybe take off the superband and see if I can get a finishing set. So I'd get a lot more mileage out of 4 or 5 sets. And it would perceivably be the same type of fatigue. But I can already see like a structure starting to emerge that reminds me of what I'd done before and where this has gone before many times. Since I was a teenager, over a 40-some-odd year period, where I have that type of experience, where I've morphologically seen what happens, right? Countless times. We're looking younger, we're feeling younger. And really what I would just equate that to is vitality. Yeah, my workout wouldn't be good right now without sugar, without rice. And if I had it right now, I would put honey on it. I'd drizzle over a buttload of honey. My body's like going, yeah, honey would be great. Do I have anything like honey? Nope. I don't have any sort of sugar or anything like honey.
do have my son's tea, but I ain't gonna mess with that. That's his tea. And there are some sauces. There's ketchup. I could do ketchup.
Yeah, I could do ketchup. But I don't really want ketchup.
That's disgusting.
That doesn't appeal to me. But I'm gonna be doing a lot of potatoes next month, God willing.
Potatoes and ketchup.
I'm gonna place this fucking order
On the 9th.
Yeah, let's see how we're doing here.
Oh yeah. So that fluffed it up quite a bit more by adding that water in. That made that rice.
Yep, that makes that rice pop. Where are we at here? That's 2 hours.
Yeah.
So we went 2 hours of continuous walking. No stopping. And I would say that puts me right around 5 miles of walking. I'm curious how much this weighs. No, I don't want it. This is very expensive amplifier. And he's got 2 others that aren't
Either operational or don't work the way he wants them to.
in the other room. So while that's cooking off,
How it's been feeling every day is my body's been really fine.
ooh, sugar. Taste the sugar. My body's been really fine on
Right around 5 miles.
a little over 2 miles of 2 hours of continuous walking at a slow pace.
Probably a 2.2 to a 2.4 mile per hour pace with the turns and the meandering.
And this is just a base, so by adding on higher VO2
Exercises which are inevitable.
with the increase in energy, I gotta take out my chicken too for later. So we're gonna take out,
I mean, we could break it down.
I don't really want to break it down. I'm gonna take out, basically, I filled this thing up, so. That's plenty for later.
Got 2 huge chicken breasts, which is probably,
Yeah.
it's probably 70 or 80.
I'm gonna rinse it off, actually, because I think that's gonna help thaw it out faster. Rinse off the frozen chicken. There's a bowl for you, too.
And we're not gonna eat that till time.
And sometimes I'll go back in and I'll nibble on a little more beef liver. It's the beef, without that beef liver, you don't grow. That has all the nutrients that cause you to grow. Most youngsters, at least back in the day, did not know that. They'd look at the quantity of the beef liver and they'd go, that's ridiculous, why would I want to eat that? No. Or blackstrap molasses,
Which has been thought of as having higher arsenic, and by the time you get the benefits of
the copper and the iron, you're actually damaging yourself. So,
you saw a big turn away from
blackstrap molasses, like people will use it in recipes infrequently, but they're not eating it every single day.
That's not really how it was used back in the day either. Like it would be used along with honey, peanut butter, that's sort of a bulking, a more naturalistic bulking tool. And those things have validity, you know? But some people's metabolisms go so crazy on the juice that they couldn't afford to take any other foods in. Food used to be super cheap. And because of that, people would buy what they wanted to. You know, even then they would buy what they wanted to. Fast food was cheap. They would end up going and eating it. That's how fast food restaurants came into what they are. And the quality was way lower, obviously, but it wasn't like it is now, where it's like synthetic. We don't even live in the same world anymore. All right, so let's pull the plug on that. So we're gonna take a leak. We got in our 2 miles, our 2 hours or 5 miles. I feel like we're just getting over, like I've done this so many times. I feel like possibly we're just getting over like 4.8 miles or something like that. And in the next, like say 10 minutes, I'll have passed it. But like it doesn't have to be exact, no matter what. Walk 2 or 3 hours. Eventually get into 3-4 days a week when and where you can with VO2, 15-20 minutes of HIIT style VO2 training. And eventually what people don't realize is on days where you skip that and you've really gotten the left ventricle hypertrophy going, you're going to give more to your circuit training workouts, right? And that higher intensity, like in other words, like Rich Peanut, his heart and his kidneys supposedly were twice the size of a normal man, of where it should have been for his physiological size. So, unless you're planning on physiologically, like that's growth hormone, man. And you're gonna see liver gain succumb to some very dark, terrible things like he'll die. He'll die. He's a very small, delicate, frail sort of guy. He's a little guy. He knows it. And he's fucked himself with growth hormone. He has fucked himself. You can't go back in time and you can't shrink. Not significantly. Your heart's always pumping, it's always moving. And I wonder what type of damage I did with the M1T and the things where I tried to damage myself, you know, where I was just sitting there eating fast food, trying to damage myself. But I was doing it as a defensive posture also, because I knew I needed to, didn't have time to train, wouldn't train, needed to get bigger, needed to be able to fuck some people up, needed to be solid, because I was driving through Oakland and doing all this shit in the middle of the night. But my son gets me thinking about some things, and it is choices. We make choices. We put ourselves in situations and we make choices, and having that situational awareness. It all sounds great in hindsight, but then a fucking truck comes along and you're a seagull flying through the air and you get, or a dumbass in a car, which I've done before, and that seagull's life is just over with. All that freedom, all that expression, all that evolution, boom, done, gone. I remember doing that once, where a bird just like flew into the car and I ran it over or something. And the guy that I was with, I thought was a piece of shit. Like he was a white supremacist, but he was doing it all out of fear. I never got into talking like he did, or, right? It was kind of an act that he was playing, and he'd been in jail and stuff, so it was like, and he was like from the Aptos type area, so it was like at the time, and the people that he was affiliated with, whatever excuse anybody wants to use, but the truth is they want to be unique and they want to be loved, they want to be admired and looked at. restroom. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're doing the Rich Pina. Rich Pina rice focus. I might need to put my zipper up. Just took a week, right? I'm gonna do a little bit of Bragg's amino acids in the milk of my rice. I can already tell that this rice is not going to be enough, so I'm gonna load it up. And so I'm gonna double my rice today. I'll be doubling up on the amount of rice. So I've got here maybe 3 cups of rice. Put a little salt in there too. So we're not doing
rice and chicken. We're doing the rice all day. I think actually I'm gonna do a little bit of pepper on there. That tasted good the other day. Pepper has lots of medicinal properties. Lately it's just been salt. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll be going in the other room and training once the rice kicks in. Yeah, maybe that's just like 2 or 3 cups of cooked rice. It's pretty good. Needs more flavor though. Needs more flavor. I'm gonna put a little bit of this soy sauce on here. And yeah, I would be doing I would be doing a sugary. I'd probably do honey with it. Yeah, that has good flavor. So I'll be working out in a few. We'll see you in a few.